The Rams have put themselves in a really unique position, obviously a chance to win the Super Bowl. But more uniquely, I think, is the fact that they're here and they still have not found a way to play two really clean halves of football in one game. I get it. It's the playoffs. Not everything goes exactly according to plan. That sometimes your game plan isn't going to be smooth and silky and everything you try works and everything your opponent tries doesn't work. I get that. But let's take a look at the three playoff games that the Rams have had to get here and kind of break it down half by half and see if there's a trend heading into the Super Bowl. Let's go all the way back to the wild card round, which feels like about a million years ago at this point. But the Rams open up at home against SoFi against the Arizona Cardinals. In retrospect, probably the exact team that the Rams would have picked if you're talking about starting a playoff run. You want somebody you're familiar with. You want somebody that you've had a great deal of success with, somebody that you have a great deal of confidence with going into this game. And that's the Arizona Cardinals. Sean McVay's lost to them one time in his entire career as a head coach of the Rams. That was earlier this season, and he got that squared away very quickly. So what happened in that game? The Rams win the game comfortably. But in the first half, everything the Rams tried worked. Everything that they needed to do offensively and defensively worked. It was one of those very rare playoff games that's kind of comfortable, right? Most playoff games are kind of dirty and messy and tension-filled and anxious and all of those things that make this stuff fun. But that playoff game against the Arizona Cardinals was pretty perfunctory. It was pretty easy as far as NFL playoff games go. The Rams come out to a 21-0 lead at the halftime, and you're feeling, okay, they got this one in the back pocket. Now, the second half, a little bit of a different story. They did not look like they looked. They give up no points in the first half. They give up 11 points in the second half. They score 21 points in the first half, only 13 in the second half. Now, you could argue, and I think it's a good argument, that the reason it was so different in the second half is that the Rams back pocketed this thing. That the Rams realized we're not losing this game. They can't beat us. We have too big of a lead. We're too good of a team. They're not quite ready for this. So let's, whatever we were planning on doing in the second half, put it away. Don't put it on tape. Don't let anybody see what we can save some of our powder, right? We'll keep this for another day. So you had a really brilliant first half and then a second half that was just kind of flat and uninspired. But it did start a trend. Let's go to the second playoff game in the divisional round against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't know if I've seen the Rams play a better half of football all season long than they did against Tampa in the first half. They take a 20-3 lead at the half, and it should have been bigger, right? It probably should have been 27, at the worst 23. Cam Akers fumbles on the goal line. We remember that one. That was the beginning of the, hey, what's going on here? But everything that the Rams tried to do worked. They were able to move the ball very, very effectively on offense. They were able to be good in the red zone. They hit a couple of big plays, and their defense was all over Tom Brady. Von Miller, Aaron Donald, just absolutely creating chaos in the backfield. And that game, for a half, felt like the Rams were getting ready to run them out of their own building. Felt like they were going to send the defending champs home with one of those really weird, hey, you remember how Tom Brady's career ended where they lost to the Rams 45-10? It felt like it was headed in one of those directions, that the greatest quarterback of all time's final game in the league came in a 35-point loss. It felt like that's where it was headed. And then the Rams did that thing that they've done a lot this season, and in particular in this postseason. The second half, a totally different story. They lose the second half 24-10. Now, they still win the game 30-27, but we remember what happened. They had to hit the love of the game route to Cooper Kupp, right? The big play down the middle of the field, 43 seconds left, no timeouts. They got to go and drive about 50 yards. They get it done. They kick the field goal. They win the game. And every Rams fan in the world was like, woo, how in the world did we escape with that one? But they did. But it was a really good illustration of one half where everything's cooking, and then another half where nothing was quite right. The defense was out of gas. They were on the field almost the entire second half. The offense got a little stale. The offense got a little predictable. They had the turnover bug. Cooper Kupp fumbles. Cam Akers fumbles again. You had that weird snap that goes by Matthew Stafford's head. You lose about 30 yards on that one. You even had a turnover in your own end that you turned around and gave it right back. Just a very sloppy half of football. And the Rams did the thing that almost never happens. They turned it over a million times on the road in a playoff game against an elite player in Tom Brady and still won. They got lucky to escape that game the way that they did. Not to win the game, but to escape it the way that they did. So one half, great. Second half, not good. Kind of a little bit further down the road of what we saw in Arizona. Instead of just saying, okay, we'll put it in our back pocket, it was, hey, we can't shoot straight all of a sudden. So that's interesting, right? Let's go to the third playoff game against the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC Championship game. You all remember that one too. Little bit of the opposite, but also the exact same thing. One half of football that just didn't look like much at all. And then a half where, oh, there it is. That's the team that we've been looking for all season long. The first half, the Rams only score 7 points. The Rams can't get anything going. They throw an interception in the red zone, throw an interception at the goal line, and they can't do anything. And it felt unbelievably familiar to what we've seen them do against San Francisco over and over again. The good news is the defense was pretty good, but still gives up 10 points. You go into the half, you're behind 10-7, and it was not your good half of football. Now, the good half showed up later, exactly when they needed it. They do what they do in the second half. They win the game. 13-7 in the second half is what they do, but they end up winning the game altogether. They have the field goals. They have the touchdown in the fourth quarter, 3 scores in the fourth quarter. So what does all of this mean? What it means is that the Rams have been remarkably inconsistent in the playoffs, and yet they still find a way to advance. That usually if you can't put together a full game in the postseason, you're at home watching the postseason. You're at home with the other, well, we have 30 other teams in the league at this point that have not figured out a way to get to this far into the season. The Rams have kind of defied convention and had one half that's been really good and another half that's been far less than the other, and yet they're still alive. So the question is, can you do that again against the Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl? And you know what? Maybe. Right? It does feel like you have a little bit of wiggle room in this game. Not that Cincinnati's not a good team. We've spent a lot of time on this. I think Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase remind me a lot of Jerry Rice and Joe Montana a million years ago. Kind of guys that just win. They just show up and they win things, and there's a connection, and it just works right out of the gate. They remind me a lot of those guys. But I also feel that this is not a team, Cincinnati we're talking about, that's going to go out and score 35, 42 points. That's just every time you make a mistake, they're going to punch it in and make you pay for it. I think that there's something a little bit less than that. I think that they're going to be more methodical. They're going to kick more field goals. They're not nearly as explosive as, for instance, maybe the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are with a guy like Tom Brady, with a guy like Mike Evans. I think they can survive it. Now, if you can find a way to play 3 really good quarters, you have a chance to win this game. You have a chance to bring the first world championship to Los Angeles. You have a chance to do something that we haven't seen anybody here in LA do since the Raiders did it back in the early 80s. Okay, there's not been a World Series, or excuse me, a world championship team, a Super Bowl team here in LA since the early 80s. That's really hard to imagine. That's a long time ago. I was still in school at that point. That's how long ago that was. So it's a very big opportunity for them to do it, but you're going to have to find a way to kind of smooth out the difference between the two halves. I think they will have a lead. We know what Sean McVay is like with a lead, 47-1 with the lead at halftime, but we also know that Joe Burrow is one of those guys that can come back and do all sorts of other things as well.